Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I'm privileged to join Past President and CEO Brian Burnett in a conversation that's going to highlight his career, his experiences, and his leadership views while he was at Bohannon Houston. Brian, we appreciate you being here with us today.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me.
After a 34-year career, Brian, you retired in November of 2017. Tell us what you're doing now.
Well, 2020 has been kind of a strange year. We've added to the list running a first grade classroom and a daycare in our house for our grandkids, which we didn't quite expect. But I'm doing some consulting to architects and engineers. I've got several volunteer activities that I'm involved in, and so there's a lot to keep me busy.
Good. Well, yeah, these are unprecedented times, and many people can identify with having home classrooms now, I'm sure. Now that you have a few years of retirement behind you, what do you most enjoy about retirement?
Well, I think just the flexibility of doing things I want to do kind of on my own schedule. You don't really realize the pressure that you're under when you're in a position, a leadership position, until you're not there. And so
Right.
it took a while to recover, but I think it's been fun just having a schedule that's kind of my own.
That's awesome. You know, some people look back in hindsight after they retire and maybe wish they had worked longer or stayed longer. How about you? Would you, if you had it to do over, would you have done it differently?
No, I figured that 34 years was enough. The next leadership team was ready to go, and I also wanted to do some different things. So I ended at the right time with no regrets.
Good. That's awesome. So, Brian, for the folks at BHI who are new or who maybe didn't know you well, I'd like to just get a little bit of background. And I know that you grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico. So can you tell us something special about Los Alamos and your youth?
Yeah, my parents moved up to Los Alamos in 1958 when I was 2 years old. Dad had taken a job at the lab as a chemist, and my mom soon became a librarian there. And looking back on those years, I've got a lot of fond memories. We didn't have the communication means that we have now, so we had to invent our own activities, and we would ride our bikes on the mesas, and we would get up activities for football games and tennis tournaments. And so I think us having to be creative really helped me in my schooling and in my work. So Los Alamos is a beautiful place. I know my parents really appreciated the opportunities to work up there, and it was a great school system. I'll add that when I was a senior in high school, my dad bought the only bookstore in Los Alamos, and that's what he did until he retired. So we've had bookstores and libraries and lots of learning and education in the Burnett household.
That's awesome. Did you ever work at the bookstore?
I did.
You did.
Every summer while I was going to college, I would spend the 3 months helping Dad out. I think he would have sold me the bookstore if I had wanted to get into that line of business, but I never quite warmed up to running the store.
Those are great stories, and it's good to just learn a little bit about you. I'm curious, who most influenced you in your early life?
Well, it was Mom and Dad. They always encouraged me to do my best. They were very supportive. We were a family that got involved with a lot of things. They did a lot of volunteer activities, and I think that's where I got my interest in terms of volunteering and giving back. And so they were great parents, and I was very privileged to have them guide my life through the years. I also had a mechanical drawing teacher in high school, Mr. Gamble, who encouraged me to design a house even in my senior year. And he was very encouraging and supportive of me as well.
That's awesome. And so I know you went to UNM. Tell us a little bit about your experience at UNM, what your degree path was, and that type thing.
Well, I got down to school in 1974, and I thought about being an architect, and I ended up getting a C+ in Architecture 101. And so that ended that career move. And I quickly veered back to engineering and found that civil suited me very well. I wasn't very good at mechanical or electrical engineering. And so civil suited me really well. I got my bachelor's and then my master's in water resources. My thesis was developing a rainfall hyetograph for the Albuquerque area. And for many years, they've used that model, or they use the information for their runoff models. And I think they might even still be using it today.
That's awesome. So let's talk about you being a student. For those in the company who can identify with student life, when you had a paper or an essay or something that was due, are you the kind of student that would have everything done way before the deadline and ahead of time? Or did you pull the all-nighter and crunch it out and come flying in at the last minute to turn it in?
No, I don't think I ever turned anything in early. That was the delivery of my work was just in time, working with that concept. But I did not rush things to the very end. I planned things out. I thought it was very important for me to get some sleep every night. And so I didn't rush things at the end. And during my work life, I found it frustrating or challenging, I'll say, working with people that rushed things right to the end and didn't plan things out. So that's how I approached my schooling and my work at BH.
Good. I want to get a feel for you a little bit about your experience with architecture and moving into the civil discipline, and that really worked for you. But what led you to choose a career in engineering consulting?
Well, I had been working at the city for 2 years reviewing drainage reports. And I quickly realized that I would much rather create the drainage reports than to review them. So I made it known that I wanted to leave City Hall. And Mike Emery took me to lunch first. He had an offer letter ready for me at lunch, and I signed it, I think, that day. There were probably 5 or 6, maybe even 7 firms in the city that I would have worked for. I got to know a lot of the engineers in the community because of the job I had at the city. But Mike asked first. I didn't think much about it, and the rest is history, I guess.
Well, we're glad that you landed at BHI when you did. One of the questions that I always like to ask is, as a young professional, what was your vision of success and what motivated you at the time when you were starting your career?
Well, people might find this hard to believe, but my one motivation was to become a good designer. I had no aspirations to get into leadership. I probably thought about advancement in the company, but I was really focused on doing design work. And that only lasted about 6 months. 2 leaders left the group in CD&P, and Mike asked me if I would like to run the group. I think there were 5 or 6 of us at the time. And within a couple of years, we had grown the group to about 20 people. Kerry Davis, James Topmiller were leaders in the group. And that's how I got started in leadership around the company, but I really wanted to be a designer.
Yeah, and it sounded like to me during that period, you did a lot of different types of work, grading plans and the actual work of the group as well. So,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I did quite a few things in a short period of time. I'll say I wasn't very good at it. I found doing grading plans to be very challenging, and I just didn't grasp a lot of the design concepts early on. So it's probably good that I did spend more time designing, because looking back, I wasn't very good at it.
Well, I'm sure that you were better than you're saying, but I'm also sure that there's a lot of people that can identify with that as well when it comes to grading. I think at some point, though, it probably was clear. Did you choose a leadership path over this technical expertise?
Well, I think it was chosen for me. If those individuals hadn't left the group, I would say my career would have turned out very differently. I might have been a designer or hydrologist, or done something technically. Certainly, probably been more of a project manager in the company. But once I got started down the leadership path, certain opportunities opened up, and I enjoyed what I was doing. I enjoyed the challenge of leading various things. And so I just stayed with it, and people had the confidence that I could do certain things, and so that's what I ended up doing for the rest of my career up until the time I retired.
You know, I always wonder if someone in that position has to feel like one is sacrificed for the sake of the other. If you have to really move away from that technical expertise into leadership, and is there lamenting involved? But it sounds like, you know, the environment was good for that, and it was kind of a natural progression for you.
Yeah, I think it was. It's interesting that water resources is the only part of the company that I didn't work in, and that's what I got my master's work in. And I really enjoyed working with the topic of water. I did a lot of volunteering during my career in terms of establishing water policy in Albuquerque and the state. And so I probably missed out some by not being able to spend some time in water resources.
Right. As a young leader, Brian, what did you do that was out of your comfort zone?
Well, I think every step I took was out of my comfort zone. I don't think you're ever prepared for the next step. What happens is the work that you're doing at any one moment prepares you for the next step, but you really don't know what's involved until you get there. And then you realize in most cases that there's a lot to learn. You're really not that prepared. So I think I felt like that throughout my entire career. And I just tried to learn and listen and get better at what I was doing.
So that leads me to asking, if you lacked expertise, confidence, or experience, who did you rely on for advice and guidance?
Well, I think Larry Houston and Mike Emery were the people I went to first. And you do develop closer relationships with some of your colleagues that you can talk with and that you can get to know at a deeper level. I also had several individuals outside the company that I could talk to, and I found that their advice was sometimes very valuable. And so I encouraged people that as you put together a group of advisors or mentors or whatever term you use, to think about some people outside the company who can add a different perspective. That can be very helpful.
Right. And if you could look back and give advice to the young Brian Burnett, what would you say?
Well, I was pretty impatient with people. I often had the answer, I thought, and I would find it challenging as to why people weren't getting behind what I wanted done. And so I wasn't the greatest listener. In fact, during one learning session using a consultant, I was voted the worst listener out of the owner group. And that was a very sobering moment. I had a choice to make as to whether to get better at it, better at listening or not. And I decided that I was going to get better. And I think people would say that I became a better listener as time went on. But I think I was just very impatient, and I didn't get to know people, and I didn't respect their opinions like I did later on.
That just comes with experience, but you sound like you were intentional with getting better at listening. This idea that, you had to manage people, I guess I'd like to know what's your best advice, or what was your philosophy when it comes to managing people?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you have to get to know each person individually. That trying to view a team as the same is not going to work. So you need to get to know people. You have to take the time to get to know them. You have to develop ways to understand their strengths and weaknesses. And I think if you make the effort to do that and to do it well, I think you've covered a lot of the challenges you have in managing people.
Mhm.
Certainly, there are different ways to motivate and encourage a group, and that can be studied and learned and then applied. But I think if one will make the effort to get to know the people that they work with well, it takes you a long way down the road of being successful as a team. And it was Mary Carter, who was in charge of HR for many years and a partner in the company, that one day told me that I needed to get to know the leadership team better. And she was the one who encouraged me to start going out to lunches and breakfasts with the team to get to know people better. So I always appreciated her early advice that really made a big difference.
It's key, really, just having that time to connect with people. I want to talk about when you were in the business and leading. I guess fundamentally, are you a detail person, or are you more of a big picture guy? Excuse me.
I would be on the big picture side, although I did some detailed things during my career. That might surprise people again. There were some things I did in CD&P that were very detailed. I did some traffic study work when I got to leading traffic and transportation for about 5 years. That was detailed work. Certainly, some of the proposals we put together were very detailed. So I couldn't just wave a wand and get what I wanted. There was a lot of effort to put together pieces when I had to be detailed. But I think I was mostly strategic and thinking a bigger picture.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And CEOs typically are tasked with strategy and vision. So what was your philosophy when it came to strategic planning and casting vision?
Well, Bohannon Houston has always done strategic planning, and I think that's been one of the reasons why the company has been successful. Is we were always thinking about the future, and we were challenging ourselves to think about changes in technology and the direction of our clients, and we just did a lot of it, and it made a big difference. There's no one person that can know the vision or the direction of a company. So it's a collaborative process. And I think my role was to try and keep us within a cycle so that we were always thinking strategically, and then find ways that people could share their ideas and their strategies so that we could come together and develop one common plan each year.
Good. Our business is a service-oriented business. So let's talk about client management. What should we know about managing clients well?
Well, it's a lot like my answer about being successful as a team or a good manager. You have to know the ins and outs of every client. And looking back, I'm not sure at times we did that well. I think sometimes we were going so fast to get work out that we ignored some of the aspects of what the client actually needed and wanted us to do. I think we could have profiled our clients more specifically as to what they wanted done and how they wanted us to treat them as a consultant. And every client is different. They have very different motivations and ways that they want to be worked with. So I think that's the main thing, is you've got to step back, take every client is different, and come up with ways that you can really treat them well. Mike and Larry were also really big on the little things, doing things that were extra special, and they were really good at doing that. And I think it just made a world of difference with how the clients thought about BH because of all those little things that were done for them.
Good. Very fundamental concepts to do the extra things for the client. Tell us about managing risks when you were doing things that maybe no one had ever done before.
Well, I can say that I don't think the company, when I was there, did anything outside of the bounds of what we could legitimately call our expertise. As a company, we have insurance that protects against errors that might occur. We also had processes that helped the quality of our work, and that's one really good way to address risk. We also hired experts in their field for all 60 plus years that the company has been in business. And Bohannon Houston, I guess it's 61 now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 61. Bohannon Houston has been very blessed to have some great experts in different types of work. So that reduces risk. So when you combine all that together, I never felt concerned about the technical side of the work that we did. My biggest concerns were about how we worked together, the communication that took place, how were we treating the client, and the planning that went into our work. I never was concerned about what we did technically.
So you hired good people, you have good processes in place. Let's talk about succession planning. How do you recommend or suggest building your bench to bring others up?
Well, it's a very intentional process. You have to be working on leadership development constantly. It can't be done in fits and starts. It's a continuous process. And that's because as you replace one leader, there's all of this ripple effect below the move that you make, that you have to fill other positions. So it's not just filling a few top positions, it's filling a lot of levels as people move around the company. And you have to have qualified people ready to step in. So I think the main thing is that if you're serious about leadership development, and I know that BH has always worked at being good at developing people, it's a constant process. And I was responsible for leading that. So I pretty much had a matrix of most every position in the company and trying to figure out how we were going to develop the next leader.
So there was this formal process that you kept track of with a matrix, if you will. I know there's a lot of organic things that happen and some informal pieces as well. What qualities did you look for in a leader?
Well, certainly, and maybe it doesn't need to be stated, but I'll just reinforce that the leader had to be living out the qualities of the firm on a daily basis. And if people don't live them out, that's probably one of the main reasons why advancement may be a struggle. So that was always the first set of evaluations that we did. We also had criteria. We had set up some matrix and some other criteria that we use to assess a leader. You know, I wrote down things that I always liked in a leader and, well, anybody in the company. Hustle, you know, going that extra mile, perseverance, staying with it when it gets tough, ending strong. It's interesting how people can get 95% through something and then not end very well.
Right.
Being fair-minded, humble, those are things that are qualities that were important to me. I also thought a lot about being kind to people. It's not a characteristic that you see discussed much about leadership, but I thought that kindness and how people were treated was really important.
Excellent. So let's consider, with all of the good, some failure and disappointments. Looking back, is there something that you would have done differently or something that didn't work out as planned or expected?
Well, we were always failing. I mean, we were always getting beat. We were always being told that our proposal wasn't the best. I mean, we work in a profession where you lose much more than you win typically. And so you have to create a mindset of just going on to the next one and trying to do better. And so failure, I think, was just a part of our lives in the business. As it relates to personal failures, there were times that I let people down. There were times where I didn't communicate properly. There were times where I lost my temper. I just did things that were not right, and so I consider those failures when I, as a leader and in the top position for many years, those disappointed me, and I always tried to reflect about why they happened and thought out ways so that they didn't occur again.
Yeah, you had said earlier that if you could tell young Brian Burnett something in the way of advice, it included patience. So that's interesting. Those tendencies don't tend to go away.
Never.
All right. What's the hardest thing that you ever had to do at Bohannon Houston as a leader?
I think it was dealing with personal tragedy, and there were lots of instances where a death or a suicide or something very traumatic had happened to people in the firm, and those moments always set us back. There were periods of time that it just took a while to grieve and to start to kind of work back out of the emotions and the challenges that were created by what happened. So I think it was all personal, related to the staff and the things that happened. And being in a company for 34 years, life happens, and
Sure.
we should expect, if we work in one place for a long time, that
Mhm.
that serious things are going to take place, and we just had to work through them. I think we did it well most of the time, and I would put those above anything else in terms of challenges for me.
Yeah. And so the people challenges, aside from those difficult things, what was it like leading the company during the Great Recession, between the 2008 and 2013 timeframe?
Well, if anybody would have told me that I would have spent my last 10 years in my career dealing with the impacts of the recession, I would have had a big argument on on my hands, because I thought that we were well on our way to uh, uh, stronger growth
Mhm.
and building on what we had. And uh, in fact, it turned out that for 5 straight years, we dropped 10% each year in revenue until we finally flattened out. And New Mexico did not recover as quickly as other parts of the country. So we had that added challenge on the fact that we were trying to manage the impacts of the recession,
Mhm.
and they were significant. And we kept our best people. We cut our salaries. We pulled back benefits. We did a lot of things that got us through each year, but it was a tremendous challenge. And I'm just very appreciative of the team that was there during that period, because we had to work well together to get through it. And
Right.
I think, interestingly enough, it was that period of time, those challenges, that have strengthened the resolve and the work of the leaders now with this current situation. I think they learned a lot, and
Mhm.
I think that has meant success in a year that many companies are struggling some. So I think those lessons learned during that period of time are very valuable.
Brian, when you look back, what is something that you can reflect on and say, I got that right?
Well, this is a tough question, because there are many things that I'm proud of about the company and the people and the clients and the work that we did. We always got the tough jobs. That was meaningful to me, that people would come to Bohannon Houston to get the toughest things designed or processed. And we were really good at it. And
Mhm.
it was our second nature. And that made our work very interesting and fun. And we contributed back to New Mexico and the region and our country in many valuable ways. So I always was proud of the work we did. Of course, the people
Mhm.
were better than any place. Of course, I'm biased, but we competed against the top national firms in the country, and we were able to beat them on proposals and be competitive. So that just shows that the quality of the staff was or has been tremendous throughout the company's entire history. So I think it was the people and the type of work we did, and just a lot of fun memories and really great things that happened during my career.
I think it's interesting that when I've asked you what you're most proud of, you've deflected to the we, to the company, to the people, to the other leaders. So I'm going to reframe this question. What would the most significant people in your life say that they are most proud of you for?
Well, I think my parents would say that they were proud of me doing a job that I liked and was meaningful, and that they were proud of how I contributed back into the community, because that was so important to us as a family. I think my wife would say that she's proud of the fact that I had a good job, something that was meaningful to me.
Mhm.
Uh, Good husband, father. We could grow our family successfully while I was still active at work. And so I think it's just the accomplishments of getting through it and getting through the 34 years with some success. And when you look back on a career, I had a very special one. BH was the best place for me to work. I found it perfect for me, and I just have very, very fond memories and a lot of high points throughout my career.
I did want to ask you about high points. And so what is one of the best things that happened to you? Is there one thing or something specific you can share with us?
When you look at how Bohannon Houston has transitioned over 61 plus years, the leadership development and investing in people and expecting people to lead and step up and do different things was very special to me. And again, something we kind of took for granted. I think towards the end, the last 3 or 4 years of my time at BH, we pursued 3 major clients: Los Alamos National Laboratory, Sandia National Labs, and the Corps of Engineers. And we hadn't worked for those clients for about 15 years prior. And so we decided that we were going to put our best effort to win those contracts. And we were very fortunate to win a water resources contract and a mapping contract, photogrammetry contract with the Corps. And we won several contracts at Sandia, and then also won Los Alamos. And that was a great way to end my career, because we spent years getting ready for those. It took us a lot of effort to prepare and win that work.
That's really good. I'm glad you mentioned that achievement of being able to secure those contracts that you had worked on for years. Brian, success is often defined alongside personal sacrifice. And you mentioned early being able to bring up your family while experiencing a meaningful career. What did you sacrifice, and was the success worth the cost?
Well, there was sacrifice at times. The work sometimes became the priority ahead of other things, and I had to push things aside. My wife, my kids, my faith at times, and so that happened. I tried diligently to try and balance things out, to have a productive career, but also have a productive life outside of work and a meaningful life. And I think overall that happened. But there were sacrifices along the way. But as I said, it was a really great career.
Brian, what are your hopes for the future?
Well, as for the company, that it continues on like it is now, being very successful, giving back, contributing to the state and the nation. I hope for a better 2021 for everybody. And I hope that what we're leaving my kids and grandkids is something that they can work through and handle and lead productive and meaningful lives as well, because we've certainly been able to do that. And that's my hope for them.
Is there something that you hope never changes?
Well, I don't think you can change the personal relationships or having close personal relationships without working at it. And so I encourage everybody to not try and skirt getting to know people, thinking that they can do something differently. I just think it takes time and effort to get to know people, and if you do that, you'll be fine.
So you're retired, you have a family life, you're seriously involved with your grandchildren, but going forward, is there a skill that you would like to master or something that you're absolutely determined to do?
Well, I'd like to get a book published. I've got some ideas. I'm not the greatest writer in the world, and so I don't have anything down on paper yet. But I'll be sure and let everybody know when it hits at Amazon that they can go out and buy it. So.
Well, we'll look forward to it. Brian, I want to spend a moment talking about legacy. When we think of significant leaders, influential leaders, it's hard not to think about legacy. When you reflect on your life and career, how would you wish to be remembered?
Well, legacy is picked by others. We don't define our legacy. Others look at what we've done, and then they verbalize what the legacy is. But I can say that if you look at the company's history, the quality of the work has always been there. As I said, we've always worked on the tough projects.
Mm-hmm.
We've been a leader in technology, and Larry was very influential in that aspect, and we've always been strong there. The leadership transitions, how we went about that, and how they still happen today, is representative of a legacy of the company. And then, as I said, those three contracts at the end have generated millions and millions of dollars, which support the success of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And when you add those to all of the projects and the clients and the different ways that BH gets to work on things, there are many aspects that point to a tremendously strong legacy at the company.
Well, Brian, as we reflect today on the success that we enjoy as a company, the longevity, the sustainability of the company, we reflect on the good things, the good work that we're doing, the communities that we serve. And I want to give you the last word. You have an opportunity to share with us, what is it that you would have us to know or encourage us to remember?
Well, I wrote some things down, so I'll quickly go through my notes. First off, time goes by very quick. Enjoy every moment. And I know that's tough to say right now, given the challenges, but I can still remember that lunch with Mike, and it's a blur how the career passed by. So don't rush. The future will come fast enough. Secondly, Larry and Mike were always very clear that you could have aspirations to do a lot of different things, but you had to be really good at the moment for those aspirations to come true. And what they meant is that you had to be doing really, really good work to give you the opportunity to step into that next project or that next position. So I guess my advice is don't give yourself. Think about what you'd like to do in the future and have goals and aspirations, but make sure what you're doing right now is really, really good. Here are some points to consider as I wrap up. First off, you really have to know yourself. You have to be candid about your strengths and weaknesses, and you have to work on things. And so find ways that you can get feedback, take assessments. There's a lot of ways that you can know yourself better. Secondly, strong communication skills are fundamental to advancement. I'm not sure it's the most important thing, but it's probably right near the top. And so getting better at writing and speaking is really important. So take stock of that where you are right now. And if you have some challenges, find ways to get better. And I know BH is an active Toastmasters company, so that's a great way to improve your communication skills. Thirdly, build strong relationships, get good at building relationships with your peers, other people in the profession, your clients, individuals in the community. Learn how to build relationships very, very well. And then finally, contribute and give back. BH has been very blessed with many, many talented people, some great resources, and we all have ways that we can give back. And so I encourage you to find ways that to give back that you enjoy. Find things that motivate you to get involved with, and just know that New Mexico needs you and will be a better state because of your involvement. So those are 4 things, Laura, that I would leave people with. Thank you very much for having me. It's been fun talking with you, and I wish you the very best of the future to BH, and I know everybody's going to do extremely well.
Thank you, Brian. This has been such a privilege for me, and I know the company will benefit greatly from your insights. We wish you and your family all the best in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.